Right, shall we start, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you ever so much for joining us today for what is a very much a trial for us here. We're obviously all trying to find new ways to stay in touch and to get to you, our readers. And we felt that we started earlier this year some fantastic open house debates where we invited people along to come and discuss the various issues of the day. And we wanted to carry those on and bring them to the living room. So this is the very first one of those. And as discussed, this is Norwich City FC and football. What now? So just a few housekeeping rules. As I say, this is a trial, so do please bear with us in terms of any technological issues we may have. Hopefully all is fine. We've been practicing before you joined us. As I said before, you can leave comments which will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. If you click on the Q&A section, you can see those. The only real rules of this is pretty straightforward. This is all about opinions. Please do respect other people's opinions. That goes without saying, it should be the case all the time. And if you do want to have your say, we'd like this to be kind of about people giving their views as much as asking questions. When we've tried this before, the best way it seems to make them work is to have everyone on mute, bar a few of our so-called panelists. And then if you want to say something, you just need to press to raise your hand, and we'll come to you. We've got Steve Anglesey, who is very much our producer in the studio today, and he'll open you up. So thanks everyone for joining us. We've got Chris Lakey and Dave Freezer here from Arch and Sport. Dave Freezer is currently busy writing up the Grant Hanley quotes that have just come through, and we'll come to those in a minute because they're very timely and very, very interesting. Ian Clark, big Norwich City fan, one of our fan columnists, has joined us. Darren Eady should be here somewhere as well, and some other familiar names from the EDP and the Pink and columnists. So thanks for joining us as well. So we're going to split this into 3 sections. The first one, we're going to look at the general issue of football. Should football, the top level, resume in June? What are our concerns? What are our views? What are the alternative options? Then we're going to hone in a bit more on Norwich City FC, look at how well we believe they've handled their element of this crisis so far, and then perhaps look at the longer term implications for the clubs. And also I'm interested to know how you guys as fans feel in terms of when you might be safe to go back to Carrow Road and enjoy football, which obviously we all want to do at the earliest opportunity, but might not feel confident doing so at the minute. We have a series of polls as well running, so it'd be really interesting to see your views on those. Steve, I think you flashed those up for people to take part in. So let's get kicking off. Let's look at the overall debate around football. June the 12th is very much the date that everyone seems to be working to at the minute. Chris, you're on my screen, so I think I'm going to come to you first. Do you feel that football, top-level football, is safe to resume on June the 12th and will resume on June the 12th from all that you've seen so far?
Morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. Safe? No. Will it resume June 12th? No, don't think so. I can't personally see how it's safe. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I'm as worried as the next person about the numbers I keep seeing, about the stories I keep reading and hearing about, to suggest that going out to play a game of football in a few weeks' time is not really feasible, because there are so many unknowns about a virus that has so many unknowns that I don't think we can trust anything. Therefore, I don't think we will start on June the 12th. I do see why people want it to start. I understand the reasoning. But it's just that number that I hear. I get an email every day that flashes up, and it's something I look forward to for a horrible reason, because I just want to see it going down. And it's not going down in a hurry. I think there's been a PR campaign to try and convince me that it's going down and all will be well. And I've seen more cars on the road, and I've seen builders' lorries going by. It doesn't convince me that I'd be happy to see 11 footballers go out there, crowd or no crowd. I mean, clearly no crowd. No, I don't think so. I don't think we're ready. I don't think we know enough to be ready.
No. And what do you think is, in all honesty, driving the push? Is it money, or is it this whole, it'll be good for the morale of the nation to get football back? Yeah.
It's money. Boris said, didn't he, in his, Boris Johnson said when he sort of said anything after June the 1st we can consider, he mentioned the word broadcasting. He effectively said, football can resume so you can get your broadcasting sorted out. Well, if that's not money, I don't know what is. And the reason nobody really cares about League 1 and 2, except the people in League 1 and 2, is because the money's not the same. It really is genuinely only about money. It's not about whether fans want to go and watch it, because they're talking about not having fans, obviously. So it's not staying true to its whole. The reason football exists is because of people. No people, it's not the same, is it? So it's money.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think is the most realistic option then that we might see come forward if it's not June the 12th? I know it's asking you to...
Thanks ever so much for that one.
But
I'll tell you what, I'd be a scientist, a football executive, and the mind of Russell Brand to come up with some answer to that. I don't know what the answer is. I think there have been so many different scenarios. It all really boils down to money. Chief executives won't want much of a delay on this, because football clubs will go out of business. Even big football clubs will go on out of business the longer it goes on. So, do you know what? I'm ever so sorry, Dave. You're my boss, but I'm not going to answer your question because it's completely impossible.
Yeah,
it really is.
Let's bring Cathy Blake into this. She was the first to raise a hand to want to make a point. So, Cathy, are you there? Ah, excellent. I can see Cathy is appearing on my screen.
I think you're on mute, Cathy.
Is it just me, or is this how every single Zoom conversation starts? No matter,
I hope so.
no matter how many times you talk to people, no matter what generation they're from, you're on mute. Cathy, can you hear us? I think we have Cathy Blake.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us, Cathy. What's your take then? Do you agree with Chris? Do you see it from a different perspective?
No, not at all. I'm not sure they've really thought it through. Nobody knows what the future holds. Don't know how long it's going to go on for. We don't know if there's going to be a vaccine. Will the vaccine work? Will there be a second wave? Will there be subsequent waves? Nobody really knows, so they're taking a huge gamble.
And how do you feel as a fan about, there's clearly an impetus and a desire from the powers that be in football to get started as soon as possible. Does it cheapen it all for you? Are you angry with them? Do you think they're just sort of trying to do what we're all doing at the minute, trying to do their jobs?
Well, I'm not surprised, because what's happened here is not the only thing that's wrong with the Premier League. And it was pretty predictable how they'd react. And as Chris says, it's all about money. I can see it being quite disastrous, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, Cathy, if you're happy to put yourself on video, that would be fantastic.
I don't know how to do it. How do I do that?
In the bottom left-hand corner, you should have a little video icon that you can press, and that will bring you. We'd all love to see your happy, smiley face, Cathy. Let's go to Robin. Hello, Robin. I hope you're well. Nice to have you with us. Do you agree with the two guys so far? And if so, what I'm keen to explore with you, well, what are the alternative options, do you think, that are out there at this moment in time?
Well, I'm not sure that there are too many at the moment. I mean, just to pick up on something that Chris said, I think it's significant that the two major leagues in Europe that have scrapped the season effectively, which is the Dutch League and the French League, are the ones that don't have significant TV contracts attached to them. The three that all the money goes to, the Bundesliga, the four rather, the Bundesliga, the Italian League, obviously La Liga, and the Premier League, are the ones that seem to be intent on pushing on regardless of all the information that's available.
What do you think is likely to happen then? What are some of the other alternative options you think they should be looking at, Robin? Are you okay to put your video on as well, Robin?
Yeah.
Good man.
Where is it again? Sorry.
Just in the bottom. You should be in your bottom left-hand corner.
Left-hand corner. I've got microphones and speakers, but no video.
Oh, never mind. So, Robin, yeah, what do you think are some of the likely other options that should be pursued? I'm going to come on to a specific at the minute that we've had a few people suggest.
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there is no question, as Chris has said, that if football doesn't restart within the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to have lots and lots of issues. It's going to start at the bottom. League One and League Two clubs are obviously going to find it very, very difficult to survive, and it will work its way up the pyramid. So we could be looking at a very, very different football landscape by the time this is all over. But the overriding consideration has to be health and safety. Yeah,
absolutely. I've seen a few people suggest, and I think we've got Mike Winter who suggested this as well. And we've had a few fans who have suggested this to us on email. Kevin has suggested this, and so has Adam. Is why don't they simply just say, do you know what? We're going to rule out this season, start again in March with however many games there is left, however many FA Cup games there is left. If we're fortunate enough to be able to get some football in front of fans before then, we'll set up some sort of special tournament. But actually, it would avoid all of the doubt. Do you think that's a realistic option, Robin? I'll come to you next, Ian, on that one.
Yeah, I think it is. But I don't see it as something that they're really prepared to consider, because the TV broadcasters, Sky particularly, are losing subscriptions hand over fist at the moment. Everybody I know has cancelled their Sky Sports payments because obviously there's no live sport and won't restart them until there is. So Sky are desperate to get live sport on, and the bottom line is the thing that sells is drama, and they're going to want the relegation battle, the promotion battles, assuming all the leagues actually restarted, because that's what's going to get people back. If you have a 6-month hiatus and then try and bring it back, I don't think it has the same effect. That's why they're so desperate to get it back sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I guess it's all those years that we've seen Sky and the other TV stations sort of rule over these decisions is kind of coming home to roost now, isn't it? By the looks of it, because as you've all said so far, money is the driver rather than sort of what they've been pretending in some respects, which is, it'd be great for morale and it'll cheer everyone up.
Yeah, the bottom line, and I've written about this previously, is that over the last 20 years, the Premier League has just become this massive honeypot, a great big pit of money that everybody wants to get their noses into, and very little of it has trickled down the leagues. So therefore, you've got impoverished clubs in League One and League Two. You've got Championship clubs who are basically hocking everything they've got in the hope that they can get to the promised land. Nobody could have foreseen this situation happening. 6 months ago, you'd have just assumed that football continued, as it was forever. But you now have a situation where broadcasters are paying for product. Football can't provide product. Broadcasters therefore want to get their money back and don't want to put money in until they've got product. And the whole thing could come crashing down. To be honest, if the outcome of this is that we see football going back to a much more rational basis where clubs have to follow the same sort of pattern that City have, and be self-sustaining and self-funding, then that's got to be good for the health of the game. Because if we just go back to what we were doing and the money gets bigger and bigger and bigger at the top, the bubble's going to burst at some point. It might not be coronavirus that bursts, it's something else will.
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. We'll come on to the implications sort of long term in a bit. Ian, let's come to you. You've been waiting there patiently in your Norwich City shirt. And also, I'll put a question out. I'd be interested to know if there's anyone here who disagrees with any of this. We've not heard anyone sort of be prepared or who has said, do you know what, I think we're fine. June the 12th, it should start. And, perhaps we all have to just take risks and be done with it, which maybe tells you all you need to know, that no one's come forward with that. But Ian, are you going to be the one to to break the run of doubters about the June 12th restart?
I'm not. I'm afraid. Well, I'm not afraid of it. That's 28 days until June the 12th. When you think that players haven't actually gone back to proper training yet, I mean, that's been looked at maybe as next week. That will then follow a sort of a socially distanced, no one within 6 feet of each other to start with. There's then talk about gradually bringing in, moving closer, having some sort of contact. I mean, that just seems a crazy situation to start with when football could resume in such a short space of time. So I think June the 12th just can't happen. Every time there seems to be some move, there's another issue, whether it be Brighton players testing positive, whether it be more players coming out just talking in real powerful terms about how concerned they really are. One of the last points Robin made, I really agree with, in terms of this could be the pin that really breaks the bubble, and I do think the idea of a lot of the bad things about football that have grown and grown over the years, mainly around money and greed, could be stripped away, and when we come through it and back to some sort of football, we might be on that slightly more level playing field where we're a bit more rational, a bit more why we all fell in love with football in the first place, which is the drama, the love, the passion of the game, and the idea of so many games being behind closed doors. Players being concerned about, having contact, getting stuck in. And I can just see more and more injuries, when they're thinking about not going for that tackle or not getting close to someone who, they're just worried about it. And,
well, we don't know how true or otherwise it is, but the reports emerged yesterday of, you make a tackle and then you turn your face away.
I can play devil's advocate a bit here, Dave, if you want.
Yes, please. And then we're going to come to Darren Eady, because I'd like to sort of get his view, and perhaps he can give a view from a player perspective as well. So, yeah, Dave, be the devil.
Yeah, morning, everyone. Sorry I was a little bit late getting involved. But I've been very much trying in the last few weeks to sort of ignore the noise a bit and stick to the facts of what's going on here. And from minute one, the Premier League have said that they are going to come back. The preference is to resume the season, is to conclude the season when it is safe to do so. And the vacuum that was created by the lack of government answers, the lack of Premier League answers, essentially just has left space for so much speculation and ideas to be floated about it, which frankly have been quite a load of rubbish from start to finish. When you listen to Stuart Webber on Sky Sports News yesterday or Grant Hanley today, football is coming back. They are preparing to come back. As things stand, the reported date was 12th of June. The Norwich City players could be back in training next week in small groups, socially distancing, of course. And what Hanley was saying this morning in his role as captain is that their concerns at the moment are how they then move into full contact training and full contact football again. That is going to be the next big hurdle that they've got to get over. But in terms of whether football's coming back, I don't think that's ever really been in doubt. It's just a case of when it's done, because I see it almost as a reflection of society, because money does matter. It's easy for someone to sit there and say that, they're just putting money before health. Of course, none of us want that. That just goes without saying, doesn't it? But if the Premier League doesn't restart and then the rest of the dominoes start tumbling through English football and football is absolutely ruined, you've then got loads of people losing their jobs. You've then got an industry absolutely ruined, the same as any other business. And that means, job losses mean, people then have mental health problems. They can have societal problems. It's all a knock-on, the same as it is with the government's handling of the overall situation in the country, isn't it? So I think it is obviously a very complex one, but I think a lot of people have got away from the fact that it is going to come back. And the big thing, as far as I see, is that they've just got to get that season done, get that final quarter, the 9 games, whatever, done next season. Don't worry about that now. That can be, knocked down into some kind of knockout competition if needs be. That hasn't started yet, but the amount of financial and legal implications of not finishing this season just seem absolutely huge. But I still have a little conspiracy theory that they've been planning a July restart for a while, almost in sort of a negotiation tactic. They've been saying June, but then they'll go, actually, we'll go back to July, just to sort of buy themselves a little bit.
Okay, awesome. Good points there, Dave. Stuart, well, obviously you've got your hand up. We'll come to you next. after I've spoken to Darren Eady. Hi, Darren. How are you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm great. Yeah.
Obviously, while still not a professional. Well, I mean, it must be a delay. While still not a professional player now, you're clearly, out of all of the people on this call, the one who is most in tune with how players may be feeling at this moment in time. As much as I dream that I've still not given up hope of becoming a professional. What do you think is the take, the real take from players at the minute? Because clearly some of what they tell us might be how they're really feeling, but they're probably going to kind of hold back a little bit.
First of all, Dave, I would say give up the dream, because I think your time's past, mate.
You've seen me play.
But no, look, from a player's point of view, I had a conversation about this the other week, and James Scowcroft from Ipswich Town piped up on social media, because I made a point about the PFA should be making a point here and making a stance to say, look, we're not playing this season. They hold the cards in terms of actual people taking onto the pitch, and Scully piped up and said, well, most of the players want to return. And that's like, well, okay, most of the players might want to return, but, most people aren't going to die of COVID-19, but people are. So I just thought it was a real kind of naive thing to say. And I think that's kind of the way people on the outside of it are looking at it. They see that, they hear on the news that generally healthy people don't seem to be too affected by it. Younger people don't. They're going to be tested every day. So they're putting all these reasons why footballers should return without thinking too much about the human beings behind that. And that, for me, is clearly the most important thing. Now, as David said, I don't think this is going to go away. COVID-19 is not going to disappear. It's going to be here when football returns, or whatever point that is. So it's going to take, I think, an instance where players are going to have to make personal choices themselves if they've got a vulnerable family, if they're too frightened to come back. It's almost like now the government has given permission for people to go back into the workplace. It's their choice to do so. Yeah. And I think it'll be in football. And I think that has to be that way, because it's not going to go away until there's a vaccine. And even if there is a vaccine, then we're talking that the virus will still be around. So people are going to get ill from it. Now, football could return now and that happen. Football could return in a year's time and that happen. There are going to be people, we've seen it in the Bundesliga already, people are going to get the virus. That aside, looking at the football side of it, I just think it's too early. Now, I just think it's too early. If you can't have fans in the stadium, what's the point in the football? I know people want to see it on the telly. And from a player's point of view, I've played in matches where I've had 70,000 people in the stadium and then gone to play in a reserve game during the week to recover from fitness, and there's no one there. It's not the same. The players that are coming back are not going to be the same. It just all feels a bit forced and a bit wrong. I understand the reasons why, but for me, it is money-led. It always has been in the Premier League, and everybody follows suit as to what the Premier League will do. But somebody put a real good hashtag on social media the other day, and it sounds a bit dramatic. It sounds very dramatic, but they said, they're footballers, not gladiators. And it's true. We're not there to be put out for people to put kind of for their entertainment. We're human beings as well. But I do understand most players do want to go back. If I was a player, I want to be playing. I want to be playing football. But if there's a doubt in my mind on that pitch and they're saying you've got to turn your head when you make a tackle, you've got to do this, you can't do, it's just nonsense. If the game is not as we know it, then it shouldn't be taking part.
Darren, what do you think happens in a scenario then, say that whether it's June the 12th or June the 26th or July the 12th, they announce, well, it's going to resume then. And what do you think happens in a scenario where one or two players put their hand up and say, I'm not comfortable? Do you think clubs would adhere to that? Do you think? And again, that makes the whole thing a sham as well, doesn't it? Because then you're not playing the season out as it would normally have been played out.
Exactly. But then you could look at the point with Liverpool now. They're so far ahead in the title. If they do resume the season anyway, to protect their players, they could literally stick their youth team in. So, there's all sorts of things that people can do. And some quite big players have actually come out and spoken up about not wanting to play. So I think it's going to have to be on an individual basis. If a player says he's not prepared to play because he's worried about a family member or someone vulnerable he knows, then they're going to have to take that. Football clubs are going to have to take that. If they want this back so bad, they're going to have to take players standing up and saying, I'm not playing. Because you can in your workplace, if you're not comfortable about the safety things that have been put in place by government and by your workplace, your employees, you can refuse to go. It's up to them what happens after that. It's a very difficult situation to be. But I tell you what, if you're a good player and you refuse to play and they say, well, we're going to sack you, somebody else will take you. It's not going to be a problem
Yeah. Okay. Interesting stuff. Let's go to thanks, Darren. Let's go to Stuart. You've been waiting patiently with your hand up. Hello, Stuart. How are you?
Not too bad, lads. How is everyone? Oh, good to see my name up there in lights.
Stuart, can I just say it's lovely to hear your voice, because in our household, we spent the last few months watching back game after game on YouTube and other channels of highlights as I get my 7-year-old up to date with why Norwich is where it's at, and your voice has become so well known in our household.
Well, do you know something? I am very grateful. I've been quite lucky with Norwich fans in the past, sort of saying things like nice things about bits of the commentary and stuff. Don't get me wrong, there have been many naysayers as well. There was a petition signed by maybe a couple of dozen people to get rid of me as commentator, most of them after I'd actually left, funnily enough. But yeah, it was one of the greatest pleasures of my career coming down there, and I've said many times before, Norwich City's sort of very much in my heart now. But football, this is a strange time, is it not? But I just wanted to pick up on a few of the points anyway. By the way, I should have my camera working. I don't know why you guys can't see it, but
we've blocked you.
Ah, right, okay.
No comment.
Probably why.
You know what you look like, Archie.
Fair play. I'm liking this. Like, despite the fact it's meant to be a non-contact sport when it comes back, I'm the recipient of many two-footed challenges here. Edie Ann Lakey getting in on the act. I think yellow cards will be getting dished out. No, I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points. What has been said about the fact that football coming back is driven by money. I think this is a case of you reap what you sow. Now, if you look at what happened to Bury earlier this year, or earlier this season rather, then I think that just shows how English football has got to a point where it's just dominated and it's far too top heavy. So if you look at the exorbitant fees that players will go for, if you buy a player in League One who's potentially a Premier League player, then the fee is going to be drastically different from what it's going to be if that player is getting sold by a team at the top end of the Championship. And that's because it's so near the Premier League. If that player's then in the Premier League getting sold to another Premier League team, the fee becomes more exorbitant again. Now, what this is a result of is because the TV money has, and all of the other factors have just bloated the Premier League into this all-encompassing giant entity which is swallowing the rest of English football. So the point that I wanted to make on that is, regardless of how this sort of pans out, there's going to be a lot of fallout from it. But in the long term, I think this could be a good thing for the game, because it's the game waking up to just the situation that has happened where the Premier League has become far too dominant a factor. And the discrepancy between the various bodies was shown in Stuart Webber's comments when he was saying about how, well, you can't have the EFL not finishing and then the Premier League finishing, because that's not fair. You can't have promotion and relegation on that premise. Now, that's just promotion and relegation. That's just the fate of the clubs. That's not what's really important here. What's important is what Darren was getting at. What's important is the players themselves, the people around the football clubs, the public in general at large. And I think this idea that you're forcing players' hands and you're forcing clubs to complete a season just because of a financial imperative when we're living in an unprecedented global health crisis is abhorrent, disgusting, and just plain wrong.
Mm.
Do you know, I think he's spot on. Sorry, Dave, to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
I completely agree with what Stuart Webber has said this week, and I would expect him to say exactly those things because he's protecting the football club. He needs to make sure he's doing his job. And, you know, Norwich are a self-funding club, so if anybody's going to get hit hard, it's going to be a club like Norwich compared to someone who's got a billionaire owner. So I'd expect those things to be said, and every different club has a different agenda as to why they want the season to go ahead or don't want to go ahead, and it's all self-preservation. But, you know, as Hodgie said there, you take your rose-tinted glasses off. I think it's a brilliant thought that this is all going to become better on the outside. And I said the other day, I hope football comes out better than it went in. It's not going to. There'll be rules. There'll be something else will come in. Other money will be spent. There'll be other investors come in. And not just in the football. I was speaking to someone the other day about just how general life, you know, we have this idea of we'll all be kinder now. We'll all be more generous to each other. We'll be more sympathetic. They won't. That will last for a couple of months and everybody go back to it again as to normal life was. And that's the way what the world has moved on. We've gone too far. And I think football's gone too far where I don't think it can be pulled back. I think it is where it is.
We're going to bring Kevin Dack in, who's had his hand patiently raised on this, Darren. I think something that I could see coming from that, because I do agree. I do think that In all honesty, we would love to think that this is going to purify football, but money will continue to talk. Is there also a danger that actually those clubs that are rich enough or have big investors with deep pockets are just going to kind of grow bigger and bigger because of this, while the other self-funded clubs like Norwich City are left kind of trailing in their wake, trying to pick up the scraps and recover from all the sort of financial hit that they've had? Kevin, what do you think?
Well, a couple of points I wanted to make really is, first of all, just to follow up on David Freeze's point, which David's quite right, of course, about potential damage to the economy. But I mean, the same logic applies to, say, pubs, restaurants and cafes, which the government isn't giving any priority at all. And again, you can see the same scenario involving in implications for mental health and people's livelihoods, what have you. And yet the government seems to put them at the back of the queue. So the government's hardly been consistent in its approach in that sense. The other key thing to say about football really is that, 28 years ago, the Football Association was in charge of the game from the grassroots upwards. They created the monster. Perhaps they need to be responsible for sorting it out. But, that's really part of the issue, isn't it? I mean, it's a very hard thing to actually do. I mean, I was party to the suggestion that I think starting the season in mid-March next year with a set of fixtures is a plausible way forward from here. Of course, with the finances, it isn't a plausible way forward from here. But that whole underlying contractual finance arrangement needs really to be sorted out to come up with an arrangement that's practical. So I'm kind of reflecting the same things as the last speaker said.
Let's move on to a bit more specific about Norwich City. I've had some fans and friends sort of talk about the increased strain this will put on the finances and the debt, and clearly Norwich City are not alone in those issues and those concerns. I'm going to come to you, Robin, on this one, if that's okay, unless anyone else wants to make a point as well, please raise a hand. But Robin, what are you concerned about the longer term implications this has for the club, or do you think that they're still well equipped to recover?
I think it depends how long it goes on, Dave. I think that's the honest answer. I think in the short term that the club has budgeted pretty effectively. I've had a few conversations with Ben about this, and yeah, I think it's under control at the moment. But clearly, if it goes 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, it becomes a completely different issue. But the good thing is Stuart pointed out in his interview with Sky, we have budgeted to be the bottom club in the Premier League, so that's obviously going to help in this scenario as well.
Shall I just jump in with a few figures, Dave?
Yeah, please do.
We had our chat with the executive committee 3 weeks ago, Stuart Webber, Ben Kensel, Zoe Ward, and those headline figures that most people will remember is that they're budgeting for a loss of income between 18 and 35 million. Prior to all this, at the AGM, we were told they were forecast to make a £16 million profit for the financial year for 2019-20. So they had used the Premier League money. Obviously, we've all talked quite a lot about how they didn't splash out on transfer fees. That's because they've been trying to find this sustainable way forward for the club, almost accepting that a yo-yo season may be needed. They hope not. And it still may not be the case, but that if they needed to go back to the Championship and bounce back to the overall health, then potentially that would end up being a better financial way forward for the club. So obviously we've seen the rebates come in this week, that the club are allowing fans who won't be able to attend the games for the remainder of this season. People can either get the money back, they can donate it to the CSF, or they can let the club keep it towards an academy fund. They had said that was about 1.5 million a game that they were going to lose in terms of ticket revenue and commercial revenue. So that is just a follow on from what Robin was saying there. We're seeing the big impact that this season will have. If, say, just for example, half of next season is played behind closed doors as well, and Norwich have been relegated and gone off that financial cliff, which Kevin was talking about in terms of the disparities between the league, then it's going to be very difficult. And that's why these conversations about finances are so complex with Norwich, because they've got that relegation possibility looming over them, which could make it even worse for them. But thankfully, with the way they're running the club, and given that they've got plenty of saleable assets in terms of players, you would hope that they're going to be able to ride this out, survive it, and still be in a reasonable position. But every club is different, aren't they? And in the Championship, there are some clubs who, spend way more money than they bring in. So they could be dropping back into a league where they financially are all of a sudden, one of the stronger people.
Yeah. There's just one point on the finances. I think somebody used the term "you reap what you sow," and I think certainly in the last few years, we all know the way Norwich City's been run: very tight, very, very organised, very frugal in a lot of senses. And I think that gives us a good foundation, albeit it is going to be really tough. The figures Dave just quoted are pretty stark, but with that foundation of a solid ethos and people that really care and will put the necks out and be unpopular for making decisions that some people think they're not being ambitious enough. But I think that does give us a optimism. Although absolutely, the longer it goes on, the tougher it's going to get.
Yeah,
Dave, sorry, football's not just a game anymore, is it? Even the first division many years ago that most of you lot will remember, but I was far too young to remember. It's very different. They were businesses then, but the costs involved now, particularly in the Premier League, they're huge corporate businesses, and this is the difference. The game has gone a little bit out of it. That's kind of almost secondary. These decisions are being made at the moment, not for me for the game side of it, for the entertainment side. It's business, and that's what I think is come to light now. Is actually it's showing, what is the motive behind all these conversations? Is it because we want the season to be finished for the fans, or is it because there's money involved? And it seems to me.
Do you think that will change the way that fans love football? I've seen, or do you think that that's another thing that actually in a year or two we'll all just go back to how we work? So I've certainly seen a lot of. I've been surprised by how passionate some people have been in their viewpoint. I just don't care either way anymore because they've just shown their true colours and they don't care about the players or the fans. Do you think that will last, that feeling?
No, it'll go as soon as the game comes back again and people start going to watch and Norwich get some success. It's a fickle world we live in now, and I think it's money driven. But football's a different business now. It's not like it used to be. And I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's very, very different. But as one of the people said earlier, I can't remember who it was, but said, you shouldn't be treated any differently to any other business. There shouldn't be any different rules applied to. They're ran as businesses. They should be treated like any other business. They shouldn't be put on this pedestal where we need to get back this to maintain this business, essentially. Football clubs will get damaged. There's not going to be everybody's going to win out of this. Whatever happens, something's going to happen, whatever level. And that's like in any business, in any, anything in the world. There is going to be effects and long-lasting effects with people. And you just hope it's not your football club because that's the one you're passionate about. I guarantee if most people said Ipswich are going to go under, most people probably wouldn't care from this part of the woods. They just wouldn't. But if they're going to say Norwich is going to go under, then of course you do. So it's all relative to where you are, I think. But there will be collateral damage. There's going to be, and it's just you just hope as Dave and Ian have said, that people can survive through this, and the clubs will survive long term. They will do. Even if clubs go under, somebody will buy them. They will come back. But the game's not going to be the same when it returns as it was when we left it. But then it will change quite quickly about being money driven, and some clubs will have loads of big investors again. You can imagine all the people that looking from afar now with money, big business owners, big billionaires, thinking, "I want to buy a football club. When's a good time to buy?"
Yeah. Just to end with the last few minutes, I would like to just focus on Norwich City specifically and whether our guests, all of you, believe that the club have handled this fairly well, and will they come out on in terms of, we talked about people losing their love for the game, but have Norwich City handled this in a way that fans will want to stay by their side? Do we think? Ian, I'll maybe quickly get a quick few words from you on that. And just to flag up, don't forget to take part in our polls. And Steve, perhaps if you can sort of finish those so we can see the results, that'd be really handy before we go as well. Ian, what do you think? How have Norwich?
I think Stuart, we've probably all heard what Stuart Webber said during the week. I thought he was absolutely spot on. I think the message about ticket rebates, I'm sure we've all got a different view, whether we're going to take our money because we need the money, whether we're going to maybe keep some of it and give some to the academy or to the CSF. I think giving fans that option has been good, and I think the way the club's handled it is pretty much reflects what we've seen of our club in recent years, in that more often than not they do things right. They've got a lot of a good strong ethos, a lot of integrity, a lot of honesty and a lot of transparency, and I think it's been good.
So just before we get a couple of final thoughts, I'm going to go through the poll results. Should the Premier League start again on June the 12th? And
I haven't voted yet, Dave.
7% of people here today say it should, and 93% it shouldn't. If 1 is the worst and 5 is the best, what mark would you give Norwich City's handling of the crisis so far? Well, 80% have marked 4 or 5. So I think, Ian, that probably chimes with what you've said there. And I just was going to get final thoughts on this one, really. If anyone wants to let us know, when would you personally feel safe returning to Carrow Road as part of a sellout crowd? Interesting, because 31% say August, 34% say January, and 34% say only when a vaccine is available, which of course we have no idea at all. And there's been some pretty grim predictions around how quick a vaccine could come. So that could be interesting, whether we'll end up in a scenario where football with a crowd resumes, but only 2/3 of the crowd are there, or how do you apply social distancing if that's still in place? Cathy, if you're still there, perhaps get a reaction as a fan and someone who's very close to the views of the fans on that one.
I think Cathy's had to drop out. She said, "Oh no, she is there." Well, she said she sent me a message saying she had a few problems, but
okay,
no problem. Cathy.
No problems. Well, Chris, I mean, you and Dave obviously see a lot of the reaction from all angles, really. Do you think that, and we'll come to a fan for final thought on this, do you think that fans will be happy to be back at Carrow Road any time soon in the next 6 months?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they will. I think it's going to take a lot more convincing for people to return, which is understandable. Some will, because some people are more easily convinced. But I don't think it's going to be any time soon. Much as I'd love to say it is, and much as I'd love to be part of a group of 300 who's allowed to go into cover matches and be part of the security and whatever this nominal figure for behind closed doors. I've never seen a behind closed doors game. I've been to Ipswich a couple of times when Norwich aren't playing. It's very similar. But it's not something I want to see, but essentially it may have to happen just to clear this all out of the way. But I agree with a lot what Darren says. I think football is a different beast. Football has a right as a business to do what other businesses are doing. Football players have as right as any employee to say they don't want to do something because it's not good for their health. There's so many things. Can we go on till about 6 o'clock tonight, please? Because there's so many variables, aren't there? And there's been some brilliant points, but some absolutely cracking stuff. But no, 6 months. I don't think fans will be ready, personally.
I'm going to give the final word to you, Darren. If you were still a player now, and Daniel Farker or Stuart Webb came up to you and said, we're good to go on June the 12th, so say the FA. We think we can make it as safe as possible for you, Darren. Don't forget, I mean, you didn't really make that many tackles, did you? Let's be honest. No,
tackled a lot.
Don't forget to turn your face when you're going to tackle all sorts of ridiculous stuff like that. What would your response be if you were put in that scenario in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think even without being in that environment now, I have my doubts myself. Going to the supermarket, I have doubts myself. Going to places where I'm told I'm allowed to go right now. So inevitably, I think I would have doubts. And if there's any doubt in any player's mind, you're not going to get the kind of quality or the expectation that everybody wants to see on a football pitch. It's not going to be the same. And it's going to be like that for a very long time. I think Chris is right. It's going to be, there's going to be empty stadiums for a while. I think that'll be the first step. But personally, as a player now, thinking I would have doubts. I'm not sure whether that would want to make me play or not play. I don't really know. But if I've got a doubt in my mind, then surely the right thing to do is to not play. And I think players will do that.
Yeah, I think the problem might be that the players, as you teed it up, Dave, is that if the government are saying it's safe, the Premier League are saying it's safe, etc., is that the players are then going to be put in a position where they're sort of voiding their contracts if they say no, aren't they? So I've got massive sympathy for the players at the moment. They've got so much pressure on their shoulders, which almost doesn't seem fair. But just one thing I wanted to say on that poll, Dave, was people are saying that they wouldn't. We've got 34% only when a vaccine is available. I mean, that's not realistic as far as I'm concerned, because the vaccine, it hasn't even been invented yet, is it? So they're saying that it could be another year away. Society will return to normal before we have a vaccine. We will not be in lockdown for another year and a half, will we? That because the economy will be crippled. And then, I hate to use this phrase because it's one that Trump used, and I am absolutely in no way a fan of Donald Trump.
I'm not letting you finish this debate with a quote from Donald Trump.
It just goes along with what I'm saying, but the cause can't be worse than the cure can't be worse than the cause, can it?
Donald Trump's better than you did, Dave. I tell you.
So that was my only point on that. Is that I think Darren's right in that maybe crowds will be down and some people will be reticent, but to talk about maybe football not returning and not having fans until there's a vaccine, I just can't see that being the case, because I think normal life will return before then.
There's so much more.
It will come down to personal choice at the end of the day. We're going to stay it safe, and it'll be down to you yourself to take it upon your shoulders as to whether you want to play or whether you want to go and watch the football.
There's also so much more that we don't know of yet. I mean, we've seen this week the talk of Norwich becoming a sort of testing capital of the country, which long way to go before that becomes realistic. But you could envisage a time where you get to go to Carrow Road if you have a card that says that you're coronavirus clear at that moment in time. If they get to the point, and this is the sort of thing that they've done pretty well in other countries, if they get to the point where you are able to tell whether you've got it, had it, if it's in your system, not in your system, then those are some of the things that I think will start to give people a bit more confidence. I said we should end with a fan, and Beth Howman told us, I can't see who's got the hand up, so I'm told, Beth, that you've had your hand up very patiently, so I wouldn't want to disappoint you. So I am going to give you the floor as our sort of final word, just so that we don't finish with Dave's terrible quoting. Beth, over to you.
That was your moment, Dave. That was. Oh, blue.
I was actually just going to say a similar thing to what Darren Eady said, and I think that ultimately it will come down to whether or not you feel okay to sort of attend the game. For me, the way I see it is, while I'm still working and I have to sort of social distance, then sat in a crowd probably isn't the best idea.
No.
So I think that's what it comes down to, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Bev. And thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Darren, thanks for joining us. Dave, Chris, Ian, thanks for being part of our panel. Thanks to those who have been listening sort of silently. I hope you've enjoyed this, our first trial of these online debates. Most of you have got my email, so if you want to come back with any feedback, please do. Just to summarise, it's clear that there's lots and lots of cynicism out there as to why football may or may not resume. I haven't really heard from anyone who thinks that June the 12th is realistic, whether that's on the side of the fans, the side of the clubs, or on the side of the players. And clearly lots and lots of doubt as to when football might resume as a spectator sport to any sort of sense of normality. There's been some really interesting points made. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and do stay safe out there.